Tonight on the Rosenberg Report, who is Mojtaba Khamenei? Is he really the new supreme leader of Iran? And is it true that he's an apocalyptic, genocidal, Shia Muslim, end-times fanatic who wants to bring about the destruction of the U.S. and Israel? I sit down with the Israeli ambassador in Washington to get the inside story on the biggest successes and the biggest challenges so far in the military campaign against the Iranian regime, and to understand how Israeli intelligence views Mojtaba Khamenei. It's an exclusive interview with Bibi Netanyahu's point man to President Trump, and it all begins right here, right now, on the Rosenberg Report. Who is Mojtaba Khamenei? He's the 56-year-old son of the late, now assassinated supreme leader, so-called supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei. Mojtaba Khamenei, 56 years old, as I say, is the son. He has apparently reportedly been voted by the top leaders that are left of the Iranian regime, all the top clerics, to be the new supreme leader of Iran. But he has not been seen. It is reported that he has been wounded in U.S. and Israeli airstrikes. And the big question is he going to emerge as the new leader for real? And what do we know about him? One thing that we know is that he is obsessed with the end of the world. He's obsessed with Shia eschatology or end times theology. Good evening. This is Joel Rosenberg, and welcome to the Rosenberg Report. We're in Washington, and we are assessing the first week and a half, almost 2 weeks now, of the U.S. and Israeli operation against the Iranian regime, aimed at not only shattering the regime, if at all possible, but certainly of destroying and neutralizing all of Iran's ballistic missile capabilities and their nuclear weapons capabilities. And in fact, we've learned in recent days that, as we reported last week on the Rosenberg Report, that Iranian negotiators bragged to Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, the U.S. Trump negotiators, that they had enough highly enriched uranium to build 11 nuclear bombs, and they were not going to give it away. Well, tonight we sit down with the Israeli ambassador to the United States, a friend of mine. I've known him for 23 years. Yechiel Leiter was chosen by Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu because they've known each other for decades. Netanyahu trusts Yechiel Leiter, and he sent him at the beginning of the new Trump administration to be Netanyahu's eyes and ears and his point man here in Washington with the White House, with the State Department, with the Pentagon, knowing, as Netanyahu did, that very likely Netanyahu and Trump would be embarking on the most historic moment in the relationship over 8 decades between our two countries to destroy, to decimate the Iranian threat to the U.S., Israel, and our Arab allies and others in the region, and hopefully to shatter and topple the Iranian regime. I want to take you now to my interview in the Israeli embassy right here in Washington with all the security that required. And I want you to hear this interview as we talk about this possible new successor to Khamenei, Mojtaba Khamenei, possibly the new supreme leader. I want to talk about the successes that the U.S. and Israel have already had, but also the challenges ahead. Let's take a look. Ambassador, thank you so much for spending time with me on the Rosenberg Report. You gave your first interview to us back in Jerusalem, but wow, the world has changed. Talk to us at this stage of the war on the successes that the United States and Israel has accomplished just in the first 12 days or so of this operation.
Well, thank you, Joel. Good to be with you. Better to be with you in Jerusalem.
I would like that.
The next best thing is the Israel Embassy in Washington.
Amen.
Look, the first 40 seconds set the pace of the entire operation. We took out 40 of the top leaders all at once in the first 40 seconds. So when you don't have command, clear command from the top, cracks develop throughout the system, and there's a problem in the chain of command, which helps us understand why some of the operational aspects of the IRGC are firing indiscriminately across the entire region.
Yeah.
12 countries have been hit by these ballistic missiles. By the way, if anybody had a doubt that these lunatics in Tehran would shoot at their neighbors, and if they had nuclear warheads, they put them on top of these ballistic missiles. Well, they got the answer this week, okay? The Emirates have been hit so hard.
Yeah.
Now, why have the Emirates been hit so hard? Because they're the paragon of moderation in the Muslim world. They have shown that you can really de-radicalize and create a society which is so tolerant of Christians and Jews at the same time. And Iran hates that because they represent the extremists that reject accommodation and moderation. But back to the successes. So there are a number of things that go in.
They've had huge successes. In fact, they've shot down like 14 or 1,500
the Emirates
missiles. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And
I can share
drones.
and I can share with you that our partnership with the Emirates is very close.
Good.
We're doing whatever we can to assist our friends. They've asked for our assistance in the Emirates and Bahrain, and we're there. We're there for them. We know who our friends are. But the success here, I mean, there are a number of vectors that you have to take into account. First you have the production of ballistic missiles, the production of drones, these one-way killer drones that they were giving to the Russians against Ukraine, for example. They're using them in all of these countries in the region. So you have to get to the production sites.
Right.
And then you have to get to the storage sites. And then you have to get to the operational sites where they're actually setting them off. The launchers, for example. Right. So we've been going through all those steps. Okay, first we had to get to the launchers so we can immediately limit the number of ballistic missiles and drones that they're firing. Then we go after the operational centers. Then we go after the production sites.
And we have seen the number of ballistic missile launches drop by about 90%.
Yeah, well, it's
the
closer.
Drones.
Yeah, it's a little over 80%.
80%, okay.
A little over 80%. Drones as well, but they're much more difficult to locate.
Okay.
We're certainly pursuing them all the time. We've moved out of Tehran after really pummeling Tehran, the command centers in Tehran, many of them underground. I mean, what these people do is they build them into mountainsides. So even B-2s, it's very difficult for the B-2s to get to them as well, because they're kind of on the sides of mountains and they're very, very deep. By the way, this is something that, the world really has to thank President Trump for this. When he said this was imminent, that in a few months they would have nuclear weapons, he knew what he was talking about. What they were doing after Midnight Hammer and Rising Lion, instead of listening to President Trump and saying, we are not going to go back to enriching uranium, they not only went back to enriching uranium, they went to producing a facility, building a facility that would be so deep underground that the B-2s couldn't get to it.
Wow.
Okay? That's what they were pursuing. Now, when people ask this question about, were they really close to a nuclear weapon, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff gave the answer. He said, I went into negotiations, this is months after the June War, when they were supposed to stop everything. And they came in, with the Cheshire Cat grin, the smug, neatly trimmed beard grin, and said, we have enough enriched uranium for 11 bombs, 462 kilograms.
Let me say this, because I forgot this small little detail. In that first meeting, both the Iranian negotiators said to us directly, with no shame, that they controlled 460 kilograms of 60%, and they're aware that that could make 11 nuclear bombs, and that was the beginning of their negotiating stance. So they were proud of it. They were proud that they had evaded all sorts of oversight protocols to get to a place where they could deliver 11 nuclear bombs.
And people have to understand that the move from 60% to 90% is no time. It's a week or two.
Yeah.
It's not like going from 0 to 3%. 0 to 3% can take years. But once you have that beyond 3%, you go up to 20%, you go up to 40%, 60%, which they're at now. Another week, they're 90%.
Was it known to Israeli intelligence, to American intelligence, that they had enough highly enriched 60% uranium to build 11 nuclear weapons? Because as Steve Witkoff said to Sean Hannity and others, it struck me watching him that he was surprised by this. Maybe you weren't, maybe...
We weren't surprised. We were warning about 9 to 12 bombs for a while, but
he was surprised that they said it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
They bragged about it.
Well, they came in, not only that they bragged about it, they said this is the starting point for negotiations. I mean, haven't you been listening to President Trump now, for years, and particularly since he got reelected? He says you're not going to have a nuclear bomb. And here they're coming in and saying, this is the starting point for negotiations. So they made a mockery, really, of the President of the United States.
And for Steve and Jared to walk out of there, who I think were sent by the president to genuinely see if a deal could really get made, which made me a little nervous, both as an American and as an Israeli, and certainly as an evangelical. Like, I don't trust these guys at all. But I think the president genuinely wanted a deal. I think Steve and Jared genuinely wanted a deal if it could be had. But for them to walk out and go, there's not a deal to be had, Mr. President.
Well,
these guys are not listening at all.
Yeah, we were less concerned because we didn't think they would actually go into a deal that was foolproof. And if they would, it would be foolproof. This wasn't the JCPOA under Obama, which would have given them the bomb in 10 years. This was President Trump conducting these negotiations. He knows how to negotiate, and he was very clear. We're not going into the same type of deal that Obama went into.
Let's talk a little bit about the challenges, right? One of them is that there's 11 nuclear bombs worth of highly enriched uranium.
Yeah, well, that's going to have to be taken out. It's not immediate, but we're going to have to deal with that. The first thing is that we have to accomplish is and this is really the goal of the war, okay? It's to collapse this regime. People talk about regime change. Regime change has to come about by the people of Iran. Mm-hmm. But regime collapse has to come through this joint operation between Israel and America. And what that means by regime collapse is that there is not an entity in Tehran which is producing ballistic missiles, which is enriching uranium to nuclear grade, and which is sponsoring terror proxies around the region and around the world. So that could be something along the lines of the existing regime as long as they change their behavior, highly unlikely. Or this regime collapses entirely. Now, it's happened in the past. Regimes have collapsed. I mean, who could have imagined that the Soviet Union would collapse as it did, or that in Romania, the people of Romania would suddenly, in one fell swoop, turn their guns around against Ceausescu. So regimes do collapse. And remember that in Iran, we're not talking about a country like Iraq or Afghanistan, okay, which was very, very divided and didn't have a large segment of the population that was pro-West. In Iran, you have 80% of the population, which is very pro-West. As a matter of fact, after Israel, it's the second most pro-Western country in the Middle East. Wow. And 80% of the country opposes this regime. 80% of 92 million people is a lot of people, okay? So the problem that they've had is they haven't been able to unite, to coalesce into a unified opposition. Now that they're seeing these cracks develop, we're hopeful that they're going to be able to coalesce. And we're certainly doing whatever we can to advise them to do so. You have minorities, very strong minorities, the Kurds and the Baluchis and the Azeris are very, very strong minority. They've had the boot of this regime on their necks now for 47 years. They're terribly suppressed. And of course, the general population, the Persian population.
And there's actually several million Shia Muslims who've left Islam over the years. Some have become atheists, some have become agnostics, some have actually become followers of Jesus Christ. They become born-again evangelical Christians. And all of them, while they're not political per se, they hate the regime and they want to be free just like everybody else.
They want freedom, and they've been persecuted under this regime. So if they're able to coalesce, all these groups are able to coalesce, or the majority of them are able to come together in unity, they're going to be able to bring this regime down. Because we've set the stage, because the United States and Israel set the stage. We're the junior partner here, okay? The United States is the senior partner. People talk about, you can say anything digitally today. You can set yourself up as a podcaster and proclaim that you know everything about everything when you really know very little. We have a few people like that. For example, we have a couple people saying that Benjamin Netanyahu schlepped. Is schlep a word that I can use? It's a good Yiddish word. I mean, drag, right?
Sort of hooked in the nose and pulled along.
Right.
You mean dragged President Trump into a war he didn't want to prosecute?
I mean, it's so insulting to the President of the United States, particularly to a president like Donald Trump.
Anybody who's met him knows this is not a man.
I mean, I've
press into anything he doesn't want to do.
I've been in the Oval with him so many times and on deep discussions with the Prime Minister, and that's just simply not the tone of the discussion. I mean, people just don't understand what they're talking about. First of all, the president is not somebody who, has a sign on his forehead, "I'm here for the dragging." Right. Not Donald Trump. And really, in the first minute of the operation, when he went to Truth Social with that 8-minute speech, he didn't even mention Israel. He said, "I'm leading this. This is an American operation. We're the junior partner. We're doing a lot of work. We're doing a lot of work alongside. Our pilots are flying wing to wing with American pilots. We're doing, taking a tremendous part of this operation, but we know that we're junior partners here. But we're in this together.
Well, Israel was ready under Prime Minister Netanyahu, going back to 2012, to do this alone if he felt that he had to.
Joel,
he always wanted to do this with the United States at the moment that it had to be done, and there was no other choice.
Look,
and
for this
is historic, the game-changing moment, both of U.S.-Israel relations, but also the transformation of the Middle East.
For us, this is an existential issue, okay? And what we do is we come to Washington, lay our position on the coffee table there in the Oval, say these are our options. You'll tell us where you're coming in, if you're coming in, and what role we should play. That's the way the discussions take place. And indeed, the understanding in Washington is that this is a battle for civilization. When these people say death to America, they mean it. That's what they've been chanting for 47 years. They began their government in Tehran, 1979, by taking American hostages, for holding them for 444 days. They've been exporting terrorism. They've been exporting the death of America, not only chanting it in the streets of Tehran. So it shouldn't be surprising to anyone that the American administration says, we want to take this regime out, because they simply are moving towards nuclear weapons. They have all of these ballistic missiles, which they're producing at a frenzied rate. They could have hundreds of missiles a month. That was the plan, 300 to 400 missiles a month, which could ultimately be advanced to intercontinental ballistic missiles. And
but even if they just weren't, but even if they would overwhelm Israeli, Emirati, Saudi, Bahraini defense systems, right?
They already can reach Germany. So they can overwhelm the entire region, including Israel and the Emirates, but the entire region. Yeah. Saudi Arabia,
right,
and take over the holy places of Saudi Arabia. Well, how would that go over in the Muslim world, okay? Right. So you're talking about tripwiring the entire region into a real difficult conflict that would spread around the world if the United States didn't show authority, responsibility, and leadership here. So we come in as the junior partner, we take responsibility. We have been called the model ally, and I think that an objective observer would say that. We don't ask for American boots on the ground, we fight our wars. And we're flying these F-35s quite well. I was in Lockheed Martin a few weeks ago, and the CEO there told me, he said, what we get from you in return is worth its weight in gold, because you have more flying hours in the cockpit of the F-35 than all of the countries involved in the project
together. So you're bringing back
billions
live
of dollars.
Data of, and of operational missions, and how can things be tweaked and the avionics be improved, and
billions of dollars worth of experience.
Wow. Let's talk a little bit about the possibility that the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is going to be replaced by his son, Mojtaba Khamenei. Some say he's more wicked and apocalyptic in his eschatology, his end times theology, and his hatred of Israel and the United States than even his father. What do you know? What does Israeli intelligence and the Prime Minister know about him, and what's his condition right now? Is he the leader, and is he even alive?
Well,
as you and I sit here and record this.
Well, first of all, it's all the above. I mean, he's an evil human being, and he will not hesitate for a moment to advance his nuclear program. He's an enemy of the West. He was involved in the decision to slaughter Iranians 2 months ago when they rose up.
Really?
He was very involved in the decision-making process of the IRGC to open fire. Many people were shot in the back, shot in the head. I mean, there were young people who were demonstrating in the streets for freedom.
President Trump says maybe 34,000 or more.
We estimate that it's somewhere between 30 and 40,000 people. So he was very involved in that. He has blood on his hands, and it's certainly no improvement over his father.
There's reports that he's wounded.
Well,
there are some rumors that he's dead, but what do we know so far?
Well, if they apparently chose him yesterday, so it's fair to assume he's not dead. But I'll tell you, if I was selling life insurance, I'm not sure I'd give him a policy.
I want to close with the relationship between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. I'm almost 60. and even reading before that, I have never seen, I'm not sure if I've imagined, even in my novels, Mr. Ambassador, a relationship between two leaders as close as this. You've been there for all of the relationship that from when you arrived in President Trump's second term. What can you do? Can you take us in there and help us understand some of what you're seeing and how this planning, not things that are classified, but how the planning, the strategy has unfolded, even to the week almost that they spent at Mar-a-Lago in just before Western New Year's.
Well, first of all, I hope you appreciate the fact that we provided more information for your next novel.
Yes.
Right? You've got material now that you can really...
I actually wrote a novel on all this, but without the U.S. involvement, called the Tehran Initiative about a decade ago. This is actually going beyond what my expectations were.
Well, let me tell you, on the personal level and on the macro level, okay? On the personal level, you're talking about two individuals who go back some 40 years from the time that the Prime Minister was ambassador to the UN and spent time in New York, and they have a relationship since then. Mm. But they're also two men who have a particular vision for the world, a vision of freedom, a vision of religious liberty, a conviction about tradition, and about the relationship between Israel and the United States. And I think President Trump has seen Israel as a loyal ally for many, many, many decades.
Clearly, he's rejected the Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly.
Even mention. I think we talk about these people a little bit too much and give them a little bit too much attention.
But I mean, it's clear that he's rejected all that type of nonsense.
He's rejected it because they're nonsense.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just complete nonsense. I mean, the stupidity that has been broadcast recently.
Let's stay on the relationship. I just think it's important that people realize it's not being taken seriously at the highest levels.
Well, it shouldn't be taken seriously. Right. It's just nonsense. But they have this personal relationship, which is one that is based on mutual respect and a common appreciation for humankind and human destiny. And here we get to the issue of the macro level, how these two individuals represent something which is much bigger than themselves, and that's Judeo-Christian civilization. The intention of the Ayatollahs, when they scream death to America, death to Israel, death to America, Israel the little Satan, America the great Satan, they're taking on Western civilization. We have to understand this. It was difficult for people during the Cold War to appreciate there could actually be an ism, communism, that wanted to take over the world. But that was the agenda. And Ronald Reagan defeated this evil empire. There is a new ism, not so new, it's been around for a while, and within Islam there's this debate as to whether or not there should be a reform and an acceptance of Judeo-Christian civilization. The Ayatollahs represent the rejection of moderation. What our pilots are doing now in the air over the skies of the Middle East is protecting Judeo-Christian civilization. Right. If America goes, Judeo-Christian civilization goes. And these two men understand that the same way that Roosevelt and Churchill in the Second World War understood that war is very difficult. It's ugly. But Nazism had to be defeated. Yeah. They're taking this decision together that Islamism, which is intent on destroying the West, has to be destroyed as well. And that's why we're living through really historical days, and we have to appreciate who we are, where we are, who our friends are, and what we're doing together.
Well, as an evangelical Israeli, I see this convergence as so important, more than ever, actually. Jews and Christians working together with people who don't believe or believe in different ways to work together for this common vision. Israel is doing something, and the United States under this president is doing something that nobody had the courage or even foresight to really do. And I want to say thank you.
Well, I want to say thank you to you and to the evangelical community. I travel this country, north to south, east to west. I go to synagogues, and I go to churches. And
you're going to Liberty University.
I'm going to Liberty University in a few hours.
That's awesome.
And I can tell you that the majority of the American people understand what's at stake here. Mm-hmm. And the support for Israel, rock bottom, in churches across this country, is solid. And I wouldn't let any podcaster fool you.
Okay.
This relationship is for keeps.
Thank you, sir. It's great to see you.
Good to see you.
I appreciate it very
you.
much. Well, I'm so grateful to my friend, Israeli Ambassador Yechiel Leiter, to sit down with the Rosenberg Report. He gave us his first interview ever as the new ambassador, even before he got here to Washington and started meeting with the president and his team at the White House. He gave us his first interview when he got the appointment in Jerusalem at our TBN studios. But I'm so grateful to reconnect him now at this high stakes, very tense moment, right? Missiles and suicide drones from Iran have been crashing down in Israel. Israel is doing a good job at shooting down most of them, but the stakes remain very, very high. And the big question remains, will we not only destroy Iran's military offensive capability? I'm absolutely convinced that we will, together with the United States and Israel. But can we shatter the Iranian regime enough to not only take out Mojtaba Khamenei, this sort of end times fanatic who wants to succeed his father, and the top clerics in the country want him to succeed his father. Can we take him out? Can we take anyone else out who's going to be a hostile actor against the United States, Israel, against our Arab allies and NATO and anybody else? Those are big questions, and we need to keep praying because this war is not done, not yet. So let's keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Let's keep praying for U.S. and Israeli forces. God would protect them and give them great success, favor, victory. Let's pray for the liberation of Iran politically and spiritually. And Lord willing, I'll see you next week. I hope you have a great week, but Lord willing, I will see you next week, right here on the Rosenberg Report.